understood the basic history, how rehabilitation came into play. Actually, in those days, they did not call it as rehabilitation. It was called as assistive technology. Okay, apart from being called rehabilitation technology, they also used this term called as assistive technology in most of the cases. Right. So in the previous class, we saw the history and how it evolved. We saw various boards, various public rules came into the play, right? Okay, so in today's class we will see the major activities in rehabilitation engineering, or the major activities in assistive technology. First one is prosthetics and orthotics, right? We all know the basic difference between prosthetics and orthotics, right? So I don't think I'll have to get into this topic much deeper. So you know the basic difference of prosthetics and orthotics, right? So we'll go to the next one. Assistive device for persons with severe visual impairment, right? So the assistive technology or the rehabilitation engineering has this as one of its major activity, which is assistive device for persons with severe visual impairments. Visual impairments in sense people who cannot see, or people who have problem with their eyes, in their vision, right? So the tool or the device that are used includes device to aid reading and writing. If you see, they have a specialized device for reading as well as for writing. Do you know this term Braille? Braille. Sorry, Braille. Have you come across this word Braille? Braille. Braille. Okay, if you haven't heard this word, if you haven't heard this word, okay, keep this in your mind. We'll discuss that in the coming slides. Okay, so what it means is here is assisted device for visually impaired uh, people. The next one is assisted device for persons with auditory impairment. Okay, can you give me an example for this category? Assisted device for people with auditory impairment. Examples. Hearing aids, good. Thank you, Divya. Hearing aids is one best example, right? Like that, we have few more example. We'll see that in the slides to come, right? Next one is assistive device for tactile impairment. Okay, now tell me, what is tactile impairment? Let's see who's gonna answer first. Tactile impairment. What is tactile? Touch. Good, Nancy. Touch. Okay, if you see in your mobile phone setting itself, you have seen this option, tactile options, haptic feedback, right? So all these are interrelated. They are the sensitivity to touch. So few people will have this impairment, right? So for them also we'll have to develop assistive device, right? Like assistive devices in sense like cushions, customized seating, the ergonomics chair, then sensory substitution. If uh, you would have heard this term called as artificial skin, right? So initially artificial skin was only for cosmetical purpose. Now they have developed the skin which can sense, right, which can do this tactile work, right? That will come under this assistive device for tactile empowerment. The next is alternative and augmentative communication device. Few handicapped people like blind people, dumb people, deaf people, they uh, they may not use the mobile phones like we normally use, right? So for them we have some specialized communication devices, right? So they will have a special keyboard, then they will have specialized switches, then computer based communication devices, many software tools that will help them in communicating properly, right? The next one is manipulation and mobility aids. Manipulation in mobility aids, it will cover a major area, like I'll read out the devices that come under this category. Take a listen. First one is grabbers. Grabber is something that is used to grab a material. Then feeders, I'll show you a picture later. Then page turners, then environmental controllers, robotic aids, then scooters, wheelchairs, adaptive driving kits, right? So all this will come under manipulation and mobility aid. mobility aids, right? The next one is recreational assistive device. Recreational, what do you mean by this word recreational? Recreational, this recreational word is closely associated with uh, what do you say, outside activities like sports, going out on an adventure. So all those will come under recreational activities, right? So for recreational activities, we do have assistive devices like few cycles. If you see in sports channel and all, there you could have come across this programs like handicapped people participating in cycle race, but their cycles will be modified in such a way that they won't use pedals like we use. They have a specialized pedals that will be powered by their hands, right? So with their hands they will pedal the cycle, and they participate in the cycle race, right? So those kind of things will come under recreational assistive device, right? So now I'll show you a few pictures. Try to identify their areas. Okay, so now what is this? See, remember this areas: prosthetics and orthotics, assistive devices for visual impairment, assistive device for auditory impairment, then tactile impairment, then communication device, then mobility aid and recreational. Now tell me, uh, under which category this will come? Prosthetics. Yes, it comes under prosthetics. Thank you, people. To be very, very specific, it is a prosthetic, right? So as two of your friends have said, it is prosthetic. Now tell me, what is it, and which category will this come under? This is a handicapped person doing snow skiing. Recreational. Good, Raghavi. This comes under recreational activity, right? Okay, thank you, guys. This actually comes under recreational sports, right? The next one, page turner. Page turners will show the options: prosthetic, visual impairment, auditory impairment, tactile impairment, communication device, manipulation and mobility aid, recreational assistive device. So in which it will come under tactile. Okay, this is not actually tactile. See, we don't have to feel the touching of books, right? That is not necessary. In this actually comes under manipulation aids, right? Few people, they will not they may, I mean, they could not use their fingers properly, so for them we use this manipulation tool. Okay, this one, can you see the picture properly? So this is a device, we call it as feeder. This will help in feeding the patients. Okay, any idea under which category this will come under? Again, this will come under manipulation and mobility. Okay, manipulation. Yes, good. Manipulation and mobility. Now this forceps, I mean, in general we call this as forceps, advanced forceps, but it is grabbers. Grabbers again will come under manipulation and communication device. Now tell me this one. Under which category will this come under? Visual. Okay, so this will be very useful for visual. This is a visual aid, and more to that, this is also a communication aid. Okay, so this is both a visual as well as communication aid. Now this one, so this is a telephone. Okay, so in this telephone we have a display which says whatever is being, I mean, which displays or which converts the words into text. So to which people this will be useful? It is communication, and good, it comes under auditory, right? So it is both for communication as well as auditory, but to be very specific, it will be very, very useful for people who cannot able to hear. Okay, auditory impairment people, right? So hope you all can okay, now this is very simple, auditory hearing aid, right? This one, it's already there. Visually impaired person, right? So this is not a normal walking stick. This is a walking stick with an ultrasound sensor in the stick. Okay, so this ultrasound sensor will help in uh, detecting the obstacles in front of the patient, right? So orthotics, which is orthotics? Hearing aid may be an orthotic, right? But okay, walking stick. But here, to be very specific, it will come under visually impaired person. Okay, now tell me, can you guess what this is? Can you able to see the diagram? Yes, this is a visual aid, and we call this technology as braille. Okay, I told in one of our previous slides, no, braille, right? So this you would have seen in ATM machines. In ATM machines, you could have felt this, right? The small dots on the number pad, right? This is actually a braille technique to for the visually impaired people to identify different numbers, right? So okay, this is how blind people read. Okay, but we have to teach them what are the words. Once we teach them, they can able to learn, read words through this technology called as braille, right? Okay, so this, under which category will this come? Orthotics. Good. Okay, so I hope you all clear with all those technologies and all those devices. If you're not very clear, I want each and every one of you to go through the slides which I will upload in the website. Go through it and get familiarized with this devices. Okay, so now we will move to the next topic, which is human component. Right. So human component. This is very essential because see our aim is to develop a technique, or we are going to develop a device, right, to help the disabled people, right? So we are to develop that device, we are going to use rehabilitation engineering as well as assistive technology, right? So when we develop an assistive technology or when we implement a rehabilitation engineering, we'll have to implement on a human, right? So while implementing, we have to know the components in human so that we can effectively implement this, right? So for that, we have to know this, read it, to knowledgeably apply engineering principle and fabricate devices that will help person with disabling conditions. It is necessary to have a perspective on the human components and the consequence of various impairments, right? So that is what I'm telling. That's what I said, to knowledgeably apply the engineering principles and to fabricate devices. This engineering principle is a big field which you would have already studied in biomechanics, and you have studied a little bit in biochemistry, you have studied in a little bit in anatomy and human physiology. So that will give you a basic idea of engineering principles. And fabricating devices is what you will learn in rehabilitation engineering, and few of that you would have learned in the basic electronic subjects, right? So applying all this to disabled person, to do that we need to know the perspective on human component, right, and its consequences, right? So to do that, to knowledgeably apply that, we will have to know the human components, right? So okay, so to do that we have three strategies. Okay, so we have only 15 more minutes left, so I want you to respond as fast as possibly. What do you understand from this image? What do you understand from this? This is a keyboard. What is the use of a keyboard? Okay, I'll show another two images so you can easily understand. So this is a keyboard. Next one is a engine. Then next one is a display. What can we understand from this image? One is a keyboard. Next one is a machine or an engine. The third one is a display. Okay, Nancy. Thank you, Nancy. First one, as you said, is an input. Okay, it is input. Good. Now, Ranjini, very good. It's exactly what I wanted to say. First one is input. Second one is machine which processes the input. Third one is output. Thank you, Kritika. So input processing, output. So this is the same thing that has been used here also in human component, but we have a different name for that, right? So first, the instead of input, we call it as receptors. Okay, receptors are our sense organs, the nose, the eyes, or skin. So all this will come under receptors, right? The next one is processor. What is a processor in human body? What is a processor in human body? Processor, brain. Good. The processor is our brain, right? So receptor is our sense organ, processor is our brain. And now tell me, what is our responder? Let's see how many of you can answer this. What is the responder now? Responder is the output. How we output our movements. Good, Nancy. Exactly. Our actions, our movements, through our muscles, through our hands, through our legs. So we give different kinds of output. To be very, very correct, it's through action or through movements, right? So we see an let's say you're playing cricket, you see the ball coming towards you. So what will happen? Immediately your brain will tell you have to swing your hand to a right side or left side, whatever. So your brain will tell, and immediately the brain will communicate to the muscle through nervous system, and the muscle here is the responder. The muscle will move your hand, right? So understand, to understand these three things: receptors, processor, and responder. So if you see this, receptors and responders are pretty much easy, but the complicated thing is the central processing system, right? The human perceive the environment via senses, that is your input, and response or output or manipulates the environment through effectors, right? So sensor is the input, or effector is the output, right? So sensing part, processing part, output part, just as what you already told, right? So now here we are going to focus only on the central processing part or the processing part, right? Why we are going to focus this is because in sensory part and output part is quite obvious, like we can easily see and witness. And if you cannot see, like physically you can see that, right? If a person is blind, we can physically see. Similarly, if a person could not move his hand, that also can be seen physically, but the processing, the problem with brain is not that easily seen, right? So in that we are going to take an extra care, right? So in processing function, there are three important terminologies that you have to be very careful with and you have to understand. First one is perception, second one is cognition, and third one is movement control, right? So remember these three. Okay, remember three. First one is perception, second one is cognition, and the third one is movement control, right? So perception, what is perception? What is perception? Perception. What is the difference? Reception, good. Receiving, good. What is it? There is actually a big difference between perception and reception. Perception is like it's actually receiving, but not receiving the entire part. Like if I'm taking a class, if you can receive only a certain part, that is called perception. If you can receive the left out part and the received part put together is called as reception. The perceived part and the left out part together is called reception, whereas only the detail that is taken in is called as perception, right? The next one is cognition. Cognition is something that is from the starting. Movement control, movement of the body. So we'll get into, we'll get little deeper into it, right? Perception, right? The perception is the way in which human beings interact, right? So see, let's say you're watching a movie. Okay, so in movie, let's say a hero is there, heroine is there, or a comedian is there in the screen. We will be only perceiving the information what the hero is trying to say. We will not be seeing what is happening in the background, right? There will be obviously people walking in the background, people running, dancing, or whatever doing in the background, but we will not be focusing that. We will be seeing what we want to see. That is what is called as perception, the way in which human beings interact, right? That can be categorized into two ways. One is psychological, the other one is neural, right? So the mechanism of perception actually relies on the neural circuitry. Neural circuitry is your nervous system, and that is a neural part that is put on the diagram, and the other thing is psychological factor. Psychological factor is that the memory of your previous experience. Okay, see, uh, a simple example, it hurts if you keep your hand on a glowing candle, right? On a burning candle, if you put your hand on a burning candle, it will hurt, right? So what will happen immediately? Your brain will send an information to your hand muscle. It will withdraw your hand as fast as possible. In that case, your neural, that is your nervous system, will come into play. So the second day, if you see a burning candle, you will not purposely put your hand on the burning candle, right? The reason is because you have already experienced it, right? So that is what is called as um okay, we got a disturbance. Okay, that is what is called as psychological factor, something based on your previous memory, right? So this is perception. So in perception is the way in which human being interact. Under that has two factor. One is neural factor, the other one is psychological factor, right? So the next one is cognition. Okay, so for the ones who don't know what cognition is, you can read the line in the bottom. It is a process of knowing or acquiring knowledge and understanding through the senses. Okay, there's some typo. It is understanding through thought. Okay, it's not typo, it's correct, only through thought and through senses. Knowledge or process of knowing or acquiring knowledge through senses and through thought is what is called as cognition. Okay, so in brain, as I told, first one is perception is happening, and second one is cognition is happening. So cognition is the knowledge we acquire through thought and through senses. So what are those knowledge? They are problem solving, decision making, language formation, right? Then the third one is movement control, right? So movement control is actually something that helps you in giving your output, right? So and the thing that is responsible for giving output is your motor function, and the motor function works properly only if your nerves, muscles and joints work properly, right? So see, these are all the processing functions. So they are reception, cognition and movement control. Okay, keep that in mind. I'll show you another diagram. See, this is a block diagram for human component, human operator. So sensor, then the central processing system, then comes effector. So a sensor is something very obvious and effector is obvious. In central processing we have this three things. Okay, perception, cognition and motor control, right? So all this will take place in your brain. Okay, so that's why I mentioned here it as central processing, and in the background also I will put a CPU image that is for you to understand it is the brain, right? So this we just saw. Okay, so remember this, these are the three things that are mainly happening in our brain or in our central processing system. One is perception, the second one is cognition, and the third one is movement control. If suppose if these three fail, if this three, like the perception, cognition and movement control fails, it will lead to disability, right? But here this disability is not that easy to correct. Okay, so if we have a problem in the brain and the disability caused is due to some problem in the brain, it is not that easy to correct, right? So if you see, this is a statistics saying that people have this many problems because of the brain related, right? So that is why I will put here, it is easy to treat the trauma if it is on the input end, that is if it is in the sensing end. How we will fix it? By using sensors. One such example is artificial arm. Okay, one of your classmate batch is doing this project. This is an artificial arm. Actually this was introduced in the year 1985 itself, right? So this is an artificial arm. How they are using this artificial arm is by acquiring EMG signal. Okay, we have few electronic parts. So if the problem is in the input end, we can easily fix. But if the problem is from the processing area, it is not easy, or it is not a what to say, we did not have much success in developing an assistive device if the problem is in the processing area. One such example is aphasia. right? So aphasia is inability to understand language. This is a condition in which the brain's processing area, language processing area is damaged. Okay, so if the processing area is damaged, the person cannot able to communicate, right? In that cases, we cannot help, or whatever device uh, we develop will not have much success, because the problem is in the information processing area.